It's time to take your business to the next level, the boss level. These are the premier business owner strategies and successes being utilized by the industry's top talent today. Rock your business like a boss, a VO boss. Now let's welcome your host, Ann Ganguza.
Hola, Boss Voces. Bienvenidos al podcast con Ann Ganguza y Pilar Uribe.
Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Ann Ganguza, along with the lovely and amazingly talented special guest co-host, Pilar Uribe. Hey, Pilar.
Ann.
Yes.
Ann.
Yeah?
What happened to you last week with your cat in the booth? What was that all about?
Studio cats, don't we love them? So
Studio cats, absolutely.
thanks for asking. I came into my studio, and normally I always have my studio doors closed. For whatever reason, just keep it cool in here and just keep the cats out. Well, I accidentally left my door open for a little bit, and my little girl snuck in and apparently scaled up the acoustic panels and got herself on top of the cloud. So between the ceiling and the cloud that's hanging, she was there, and I was sitting outside the studio. I thought I heard something, but I was like, oh, whatever. Just had my headphones on, so I wasn't sure where it came from. Sometimes I hear things in my headphones. And I came in here to record a job, and all of a sudden, I look up and I see her. She's on the side panels, and she's like scurrying around my booth on top of the acoustic panels on the ledge. And it was hysterical. And so I had the recording going. So I had the whole transaction recorded. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing up here? And she didn't know how to get down. Of course, you know how cats, they climb up trees and then they get scared to come down. There she was on the ledge, all scared to come down. I couldn't get her. I had to get my husband to come get her. Anyways, that was the funniest thing. Poor little thing. And not only that, right? That same day, she had scaled the acoustic panel on the outside door. So when I was in here, right? So I'd closed the doors. We got her down and she was safe. Then she scaled the outside of the door. And I thought it was my husband, knocking, scratching. You can hear me doing that, like that kind of thing. And I thought, well, Jerry, you could just knock on the door. But when I came out, I flung the door open, and she was literally on the ledge, because I have an acoustic panel on the outside of my door, too, and I have 4-inch panels. So she can fit easily on the top ledge. So I swung the door open, and she's on the top of the door that I flung open unknowingly that she was up there. I shut the door, I looked up, and there she was.
So she scales vertically. She scales
vertically.
Vertically.
She does.
Oh, my stars.
She does.
Your walls must be interesting with the claw marks.
Well, no, she doesn't touch the wall. She literally jumps onto the acoustic panel. I don't have any
she jumps
scratch.
so high.
Yeah, well, I have acoustic panels everywhere in my
office.
office.
So she just kind of darts.
She darts. She scales up it, and the funny thing is that Tim Tippett's, who built my booth, for all of the people that know, he was here right before lockdown of the pandemic and built this beautiful custom booth for me. I literally have 23 of his famous DIY acoustic panels. They're 4 inches. They're lovely, and they have felt on the outside, a nice dark gray felt on the outside. And that's what she grabs onto, and she scales up it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is one enterprising kitty.
Well, multiply that by 3 because, I have 3 studio cats, and I know you have a studio cat too.
I do.
You do.
I do.
We love our studio cats. And I think we could spend an entire podcast talking about our fur babies. You know what's funny, Pilar? I know that there are people out there that will identify with us. And they don't have to be cat lovers. They just have a special fur baby animal that they love and helps them get through the day with their business.
Absolutely. And since, you spend so much time alone in your booth.
Isn't that the truth?
I have friends of mine who have dogs who just sit there. Unless they snore, then the dog has to go outside. And my cat actually sometimes I've heard his breath in the recording. So I have to kind of gently take him out. But most of the time, he doesn't make too much noise. So, but sometimes you can hear it. And I'm like, what is that noise? I'm like, there's no leaf blowing going outside. And then I realize it's my cat. is making that noise. So I'm like, okay, you got to go outside now.
I think our animals, I know so many of us in the industry that have animals that we love. We love our studio babies. And I think that in many cases, they help us perform better. They help us to take that break and share some joy and love with our animals and just help calm us down, help us get through the day, and help us with our jobs, doing what we're doing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's talk turkey.
Turkey or cat?
Let's talk cat. Let's talk meow. Let's talk meow. And tell me, so you've got 3 kitties. How long have you had them? What are their names? How did they come into your life? What do they look like? All that stuff. And then I'll tell you about mine.
Oh, my kitties. I love my kitties. So the story of the kitties, I've had cats all my life. And I've always, in my family, we always rescued cats. And we always had black and white cats. And when I moved to New Jersey on my own, I also rescued a cat who was black. And just have always had them as companions along with me. And when I met my husband, Jerry, I always say that the most difficult part of our merge when we got married was merging the cats and not us. Like I had no problem just spending my life with Jerry and moving in with him. But it was the cats that were the big problem because he had 2 cats and I had 1 and they were adults.
So you met a fellow cat lover? How rare is that? Wow.
I know, right? And he rescued his cats too. So the hardest part was getting my cat to get along with the other. My cat was completely spoiled. And then getting along with 2 other cats. And so we had a procedure. We had a strategy and ended up with the cats merging fine.
I call that the getting to know you, getting to know all about you.
Isn't that the truth?
That's from The King and I.
Yeah. So we had those cats. And so I remember when my initial cat, when I moved out because I moved to New Jersey by myself. And so I was independent for 11 years before I met Jerry. And so my cat, Dexter, little Dexter, he was my companion. He was
your main man.
He saved me in more ways than I can even say. Okay. And when he passed, I was devastated. And I just remember thinking, I can't get another cat again. And I went through that whole initial, I can't ever do it. And I promised myself that I wouldn't get another cat unless a cat showed up on my doorstep. And you know what I mean? I would consider that a sign. Well, one did. And that became Scotch, my orange cat. I had never had an orange cat before. And Scotch was the sweetest cat ever. And we had Scotch for 14 years. And ultimately, Scotch moved from Jersey to California. We brought him on the plane along with Jerry's cat, Forrest. And we started our lives in California with those 2 cats. And ultimately, Forrest passed. And then ultimately, Scotch passed. And he was the one that all of my voiceover friends knew about because I would have lots of parties, I would have meetups at my house. And so everyone knew Scotch because Scotch he would be in a room of 50 people and just, going from one to the next. He was very social. And when he passed, and I knew, you always I think with every animal, if they pass, but for this one, I was like, I am going to be devastated. He was just one of those cats. And he was a Manx cat. Manx cats don't have tails, not by any sort of abuse. They just are bred that way. So they don't have a tail. Scotch didn't really have a tail. And he was the sweetest cat. And I thought, after he passed, I was like, if I had another cat, I would get another orange Manx. And I remember he passed, and I was so devastated. And this is when you're finally working on your own. I was full-time voiceover. I was alone in the house during the day. Jerry was in his job. And I literally was like, it's too quiet. It's too quiet in here. Not that he made a lot of noise, but I said to my husband after a week, I said, I know I'm devastated. I'm not trying to replace this cat, but it is too quiet and I must have another cat. Would you mind? I happened to see this cat on the web because I was like, I want an orange Manx. So I started hunting for orange Manxes and saw this one, and his picture just called to me. Like his little eyes said, I need you. And I showed the picture to Jerry, and I said, Jerry, would you go? He was in Oregon, and we were in California. I said, would you go to Oregon to see him? And Jerry said, yeah, I would.
So you crossed state lines.
So we did. And the funny thing is it wasn't just the orange cat. This is a farm, and they had 2 other kittens that they were showing that were these adorable little kittens. And this picture of the 2 of them, like little tiny snowballs. And I looked at them and went, oh my God, they're so cute. And I tucked that little memory in my head. And when we went to Oregon to visit the orange cat who spoke to us, we saw him, we picked him up, and, we wanted him to pick us. And he did. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, fantastic, we'll take him. And we actually flew to Oregon with a carrier. And I said to my husband, I said, Jerry, can we take another carrier? Because maybe we should get 2 cats so they can keep each other company, right? Because I had just the single cat after a while. And I said, they can keep each other company. And he was fine with that. So we took 2 cat carriers. And so we were all set on getting the orange one. And I was like, good, now we've got an extra cat carrier. And I said, do you have kittens? And she said, yeah, they're in the house. Do you want to see them? And I was like, yeah, I do. And the first 2 kittens out were the ones that I saw in the picture. And it was Sabrina, who just scaled my studio. She was out there, the bold little girl, and I never had a girl cat either. Bold little girl out there playing with her little ball, and her brother, she's a tuxedo, by the way. She's a black and white, but she's a Manx, right? She's a Manx. Mm-hmm. And her brother, who is more of a tabby, he came out to play, and the 2 of them were adorable. And I sat on the floor, and I said, Jerry, I want both of them. I want all 3 cats. Can we do it? And he said, sure. So we took all 3 cats and we put the 2 kittens, because
you became a family of 5.
We became a family of 5. And the 2 kittens fit in one carrier, because the orange Manx, which, we call Turk now, the orange Manx was 2 months older. And these 2 kittens were just adorable. They fit in one carrier. So we literally bought 3 cats back on the plane. And it wasn't just a direct ride from Oregon to California. We had a stopover in San Francisco. So we had to take these kittens with us through a connection, and then one of our connections was delayed, and we're like, oh God. It's just when you're in an airport with kittens and cats, it's a crazy thing. But we got them home, and I started taking pictures. And if you asked me how many pictures I have on my phone of these cats, oh my God, I probably have over 10,000, because as kittens, they were adorable. They just loved each other, and they're our family. They are a family. They're 5 now. They're happy as can be since the pandemic, by the way, because the 2 of us are home working all day, and they get all the attention that they want, and they're just happy, healthy cats, and I'm very blessed, very blessed. Aww. So that's kind of the story of who they are. And
a tale of 3 cats.
The tale of 3 cats. And by the way, I will make mention of the fact that because I did have a health scare earlier, I was unable to have children, so I named one of our cats Sebastian, which is Jerry's father's name. And so in keeping with the tradition of naming your children after your father-in-law, Sebastian, and the little sister, the Manx, Tuxedo, which is the little girl, is Sabrina. So, and they're named Sebastian, Sebastian, and Sabrina, Seb, instead of Sab, because they're the siblings.
This is like the Kardashians of cats.
The siblings, Sabrina. And Turk, who is the orange Manx, he became named Turk because our best friend had a dream that we had a turquoise cat before we actually had cats. I had to honor that. So
of course you did.
He became Turq, but that's his name, Turk. And yeah, they're everything to us. They're wonderful, wonderful little studio cats that are happy and make me happy. So
adorable.
Let's talk about you, though, because I feel like you have a long history with cats, not just your current Paco.
Well, yes and no. Mm-hmm. I had a Siamese cat growing up, and it was given to us, and we were told it was a boy. Until, of course, the cat had a litter with some tomcat down the street, and then we found out it was a girl. My mother had cats growing up, but I don't know what happened. Anyway, her name was Chipalito, named after a river, El Tolima, in Colombia. And we had a dog, and his name was Bambuco, which is a dance in Colombia as well. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But actually, that was sort of like my only experience. I didn't really take care of them, per se. My mother took care of the animals. So what happened was that I had a dog. I'd had a Shih Tzu, and her name was Chiquita for a while. And I'd always felt like she was so adorable that it would be nice to have a companion. But I was like, I can't have another dog. Mm-hmm. And it had occurred to me about a cat, but I thought, well, how would they get along? It's like I have a small apartment in Miami. I don't know how that would work. So I went with a cousin of mine once removed on my brother-in-law's side, and she had a timeshare in Mexico in this place called Isla Mujeres, which is off of Cancun. And so I went and visited her, and she was very involved with an animal clinic down there. And they were having a free spay and neuter day for everybody, everywhere on the island, to help control the population. So I was on vacation, but I went and I visited the clinic. And so I walked in, and she was involved with the vet because she helped out, and they were doing surgery. They had masks on and gloves and everything. And so I literally I walked in. There were cats everywhere in this clinic. It was amazing. They were everywhere. They were in carriers. They were sitting on top of tables. And then I was just kind of leaning over looking at like this little trio of black cats when all of a sudden I feel this thing like jump on me. And I'm like, oh, because, I didn't have that much experience, when I was little. But I was just like, why? What happened? This cat had jumped on me. And it was this striped cat. And I was like, wow. And then somebody later said, oh, he picked you. I was like, what does that mean?
Yes, I believe that.
So I started following him around, and somebody pointed it out to me because there were literally dozens and dozens of cats. And so, of course, as soon as I started following him, he just ran away. He just wanted to have nothing to do with me, right? So, of course, the proverbial,
You're like, he
chasing.
did not pick me, but he did.
But he did. Of course he did.
He was playing coy.
Exactly. He was playing hard to get.
Yep.
So then I became a little obsessed.
Because he didn't want you after that. And you're like, I must have him now.
I must have him.
I love it.
I had only intended to just go that day to the clinic because I was on vacation and I was staying in this house and it was really pretty and there was a pool. And then I was like, let me go back. Let me go back to the clinic. And I went back the next day and I actually helped out. I was sort of a volunteer. I would hold the cats as they were waking up from the surgery. And I would just hold them. It was wonderful. And so then we had dinner that night. There were volunteer vets there and the head vet and my cousin, once removed. And we were talking about my experience. And they said, well, why don't you just take him home with you? And I was like, what?
Aww.
And I thought, oh, how could that be? So I immediately called two friends of mine, a guy and a girl. And I said, what do you think? Because they both had experience with cats in Miami. And they were like, well, why not? And I was scared because of the whole dog situation,
right.
how they would get along. So the next day I went to the clinic. And my cousin and the other vets had gone off to do the same thing in another town. So it was just the nurse who was taking care of everyone. And so she gave me all this stuff. They had already gotten the papers for me. But I thought, okay, let me just see what it's like. Let me just do a trial run because I don't know if this will work. So I brought him home that night. They let me a carrier. I got everything. And as soon as I arrived, I put his bowl and, his litter. I had everything ready for him. He went and he crawled up and he just basically lay on my leg.
Aw.
And then he lay on top of my stomach for the longest time.
Did he see the dog?
No. We're still in Mexico here.
Oh,
we're still in Mexico.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
We're still in Mexico. So then I was like, this is so weird because I don't know this cat. And he's just
he loves you.
He's looking for warmth. But yeah, I guess he felt something. So I was like, okay, this is it. I'm done. I'm taking him.
I'm in love.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in love and there's no going back.
I hear that.
So I went back to the clinic and I told her and we got all the information. The one thing you're supposed to do when you take a cat on board is you're not supposed to give him anything to eat. And I was like, okay, great. And so I get to the airport and you have to take the cat out of the carrier. You can't put the carrier through the x-ray machine. So I'm right there. I take the cat out of the carrier. The cat escapes.
Oh, geez.
And I run. I followed that cat, goes down the escalator, and I'm seeing my life flash before my eyes.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
I haven't had the cat 24 hours, and he's going to die. He's going to go out into the street.
Oh, my God. That would freak me out.
Yeah, and I could see the doors outside to the outside of the airport.
Opening.
I was running so fast. And then he ran down the escalator, and then he ran there was a little cafeteria, and he went underneath. There were these policemen having coffee, and he ran under their legs. So I scooped him out, and my heart was beating so fast.
God.
I ran back up. I had left everything.
Could you imagine? You're chasing your cat in an airport. Like that to me.
Imagine.
Oh my gosh. No.
Imagine. And he was so fast. He was a kitty. He was 5 months old.
Oh, man.
So I go back up, and the people who had been behind me were guarding my stuff, which is kind of amazing. I didn't even have time to ask. I just left. So they brought my stuff back.
Oh, that's nice.
They had my stuff there, so they helped me, get him back in there. And so then we went through, I'm holding on to him for dear life. I put him back in the carrier, And then, of course, I never let go of the carrier.
Yeah.
I literally went to the bathroom with the carrier around my neck.
Of course. Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't leave him anywhere. So we get on the plane and, there's a cat and everybody, the people next to me are oohing and ahhing.
So you had him like in a little duffel, right? So he could go in front of your feet.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, that's how we brought ours. Yeah.
There was no way I was putting him in the body of the plane.
Me too.
No.
I'm so glad that we had little kittens that we could put in front of our feet so we could see them and comfort them.
And when my dog traveled with me, he's either coming with me in the carrier and he fits, or I'm not traveling with him because I just, that whole thing of putting the dogs there just scares me.
That does scare me too.
It's
I've
scary.
heard horror stories, but if you have to transport a big animal, if it's between that and not having the animal.
I know, exactly. You have to,
you do it, right? But otherwise it's scary. I totally get that.
It's less than ideal. Yeah, it's less than ideal.
Yep.
So we're on the plane, and luckily I'm in the window seat. And then I got him a nice little towel so he would feel comforted and it wouldn't be empty in the cat carrier. And then I start smelling something.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, oh, no. And it smell. And then it gets worse and worse. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. And so I turned
And the people beside you are like...
I turned to my seatmate and I said, I'm so sorry about this. And they were like, yeah, it stinks, but okay. But there was no way I could open it because I was like, I can't. There's no way I'm opening it.
Could you imagine if he got away in the plane? God. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So my friend picks me up, a dear friend who got me all the accoutrements that I needed for the cat in Miami. So, the litter and the box and the blah, blah, and the food. And so we get there and my dog is there because she's so excited to see me because someone in the building was taking care of her. And so I arrive with
a stinky carrier.
Oh, you have no idea. It was everywhere. It was everywhere. Gosh. It was so bad. And so then the cat comes up and is looking at me and goes and looks what's inside. Because, what they teach you is when it's a new situation like that, you have to just let them find their way. You don't place them. You just let them find their way.
Mm-hmm.
So then I go close to my dog and my dog, Chiquita, she rejects me.
Oh, no.
She ran away. And I was like, oh, no.
You've brought another animal into the house.
This is it. This is it. This is the end. I have traumatized my dog. I was devastated. I was devastated for like 3 days.
Yeah.
Of course, I had to clean this absolute mess. It was just so awful. Found out that the poor cat, after many trips to the vet, had worms, but, we finally figured that out. But after a few days, after circling each other and being very wary of each other, they got along. And so much to the point that one time I left out these little fig bars that my mother had gotten me in New York that you can get at like Korean delis, and they're just like my favorite. She had brought them, and I had left them on the kitchen counter. And I'd forgotten about them because she arrived right after I got the cat. And then all of a sudden I found the wrapper on the floor, and I thought, oh, this is weird. And then I put two and two together, and I realized the dog can't climb up there.
Right. So the cat
climbed up.
Down.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh my gosh, now they're a team. They're speaking to each other. So I named him his full name because I truly believe in giving animals their full names. His full name is not just one name. They need to have at least three because I have a couple names too. So his name is Paco del Barrio, which is Paco of the neighborhood. Paco del Barrio Uribe. So it's my last name.
There you go. Of course, our last names are Genguza as well.
Of course. They have to have a last name. They can't just, and they ask for it at the vets.
Yep.
So that's very important. So they got along like two peas in a pod.
Lovely.
After
Do
that.
Do they sleep and cuddle together?
They never slept and they cuddled together, but Paco, I would find them like on the couch. So Chiquita would be on top of the couch and Paco would be on the bottom, or it would be reversed. So they never slept together, but they would sleep near each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then when my poor Chiquita, I had to put her to sleep. It was so tragic. When I came home from the animal hospital, Paco was looking all over for him. Oh my gosh. It hit him really hard.
Yep.
And now he's alone. So I haven't thought of getting another cat.
Interestingly enough, it's always like, do we get when one goes, and there was only one left? If you remember when we came to California, we had Forrest, which was Jerry's cat, and then the orange cat that had showed up on the doorstep, right, that we decided to take in, and they were very different in age. So the orange cat was really a kitten. So when we got to California, they had already known each other, but I do remember when we were merging the cats in the beginning, we had to put them in like separate rooms. Like when I was introducing Jerry's cats to my cat so that they could kind of get to know one another and then merge. That was, again...
Yeah. It's not instantaneous.
The toughest part of Jerry and my marriage was merging the cats. Which I think is so funny.
Well, because animals do get along, but it's not an instantaneous thing.
But when they're left alone, so I know that like when Forrest left and it was just Scotch, he was sad. He was really sad. But he also became very used to being the only kid in town. And so he was very spoiled. And then I thought after he passed, I said, well, let's just get a couple right away that are used to each other. So the siblings were fantastic. Plus the orange cat, which is interesting because they're not a true brother to the orange cat, but they all came from the same place. And so there is a little bit, because there's 3 of them, the older cat every once in a while is a little alpha with the other 2. But other than that, they all get along. They've all been together for 5 years, and I like having multiple animals, but I get it. You know, when you have a single animal for a very long time, they get very used to being the queen or the king.
It's hard. It's hard. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you that Paco he's an amazing cat. He's a traveler. He went however many states I went through. What is it, 7 states with me to California?
And it's a long airplane. I always worry about the plane rides.
Plane rides are the worst.
What about the pressure? How does that affect your animal when you're bringing them on a plane? I know that my ears get plugged up. Like, does their ears hurt? Like,
I know. I agree.
Their little
and
bodies do. Like,
it's scary. Yeah.
It is.
I mean, driving with him was definitely easier, although he did whine a lot.
They don't like the car, that's for sure.
They do not like the car at all. But he's very much my companion. And I will say this for the VO bosses. If you have an animal, they are great to direct your copy at.
Yes.
They really are. And I've been doing this a lot more.
Try it out on Paco.
Well, because a lot of the times I'll be walking around practicing. Mm-hmm. And then when I direct the copy to him, whatever it is, it just changes it because I have somebody to bounce it off of. A lot of the times I'll call my mom or my sister and they'll help me over the phone. But there are times when you don't have a dialogue. Sure. You're doing like a short narration or you're doing for a commercial product and you need that little furry ball.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So he definitely helps. He definitely helps in my whole job situation.
Whole world. Our whole world.
Yeah.
You know, I love, bosses, if you've got a studio animal, studio pet, we'd love to hear your stories because every once in a while, you know, on social media, my groups, whenever I ask people to post pictures of their studio pets, oh my gosh, the response we get. I mean, it's just, they're members of our family. And I think that I'm glad that we dedicated a whole episode to our studio cats because I think anybody can probably talk a very long time about their studio pets and what they mean to them. So, yeah, good episode, Pilar. I love it. And you know what's really cool? If you are a talent and you want to make an impact for a local charity or a cause, I know for me, I like to give to different animal organizations. You can do that through an organization that is our sponsor, 100voiceswhocare.org. You guys can find out more about how you can make an impact. Visit 100voiceswhocare.org. And I'd also love to give a great big shout out to IPDTL because that allows Pilar and I to talk and talk about our beloved studio cats. And you guys too. Find out more at ipdtl.com. And you guys have an amazing week. Love on your studio pets. And we'll see you next week. All right. Bye.
Meow.
Meow. Oh, see you next week, guys. Bye.
Meow. Meow, meow.
Join us next week for another edition of VO Boss with your host, Ann Ganguza. And take your business to the next level. Sign up for our mailing list at voboss.com and receive exclusive content, industry revolutionizing tips and strategies, and new ways to rock your business like a boss. Redistribution with permission, coast-to-coast connectivity via IPDTL.